The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 82.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Thomas Senherho, filling in for Father Fett this week, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today we're talking about the second installment in the Cad Bane Western, The Good, the Bad, and the Duro. Episode 9 of The Bad Batch, titled Bounty Lost. And joining me this week on the show are Mike Creevy. Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And Angela Cialana. Hi, Angela.
Howdy, howdy.
And Andrew Hermes. Hi, Andrew.
Hello. Good to be back. So
before we get started this week, we'll talk about the show in a minute, but there's this little tradition on our Slack channel that Mike has started. And I would like him to introduce the concept to you, mostly because I am dying to see which obscure reference he used in the waiting line this week.
Well, and not just this week, but I wasn't here last week, so I didn't get to share the one with you guys last week. I don't think I. So here's a few. I'm going to describe it, but the guys here watching can see too. I actually have the slips here. So here was one from a while back for prepared for Ben Kenobi. Okay, I did lose the Lord Vader one, but what's going on here is whenever I go, it's almost every week that we get lunch meat, and whenever I order lunch meat at the local grocery store, they have a little kiosk there. It's basically an iPad, and it asks you can put your cell phone number in. I don't do that. You can just go with the number, or you can type a name in. It doesn't say your name. It says type a name. So not that I would have moral, sort of scruples over it anyway. But the only downside of all of this is that they don't announce it. That would really make it the best, if they actually had to read it out. But I get these slips with the so somebody's seeing it and they're putting it in the little thing, and I come up and retrieve it. So the best is they announce it over the loudspeakers when your deli order's done. So I'm walking around the store, but they just say the number. I'm hoping for the day when they have someone that has to actually read it, especially since it's in like an automatic voice, or it's like a robo voice thing. It would be so great if they were trying to have this like robo voice speak it. So last week, I've done Lord Vader, Ben Kenobi. I don't have the Salacious Crumb one here, unfortunately, but that was one of my favorites. This is from last week. Chut Chut Watto. I thought that's not just a name. I'm going for a phrase. And then, of course, this week I thought it would be appropriate to have none other than Cad Bane on the list. So I have not yet had anyone in the deli comment when they hand it to me. I'm sure someday I will, but some of these characters are pretty obscure. So I don't know. How did we want to do this? Was the idea that we would ask for names people want me to use, or what we want to call this? Or
here's the deal. Here's what I think we should do. I think we should make this a show thing, right? And I think what we need from you, listener, is a name for this segment of the show. So what are we going to call it? That's what we would like to hear from you. So let us know on starwars@sqpn.com or ping us on Twitter @sqpn. And just tell us your ideas for this segment. What are we going to call this Star Wars Who's Next portion of the show? And
Deli meat order.
I've got more plans for it for later. I've already got some plans for the future for this, because I think it'd be really great for us to make a real thing out of this. I'm already going to go to Starbucks and do the same thing, because at Starbucks they do call your name.
I think we should have everybody, at least by maybe something for next May, get some video of us doing this and then share it in the episode or something, make it live. But the only thing I could come up with, and it was just one thing that popped in my head, and I don't really like it, but the only thing that popped in my head was "May the horseradish be with you." But that was like, well, nah. But we'll think of something. I'm sure. Yeah.
So you guys send us your suggestions for this, and we'll see what we end up with. All right, so on to this week's episode, actually, of The Bad Batch. This week's episode is called Bounty Lost, and initial impressions from you guys. What did you think about this one?
Oh, well, I loved seeing Cad back again. If y'all listened to the last episode, you know that I don't know if it's the Texan in me or what, but I just love Cad Bane. And so to hear that score again, there's the little musical motif that Kevin Kiner has got with the shaker and everything. I love hearing that rattlesnake effect. So it was great to see him back. It was awesome to see him interacting with Fennec Shand. I mean, I love seeing all the little ends come together. And I think that was my favorite part of this episode, was just our favorite aspect is just seeing all these things that I've come to love from the different, parts of the saga and putting them all together in this episode. That's one of the things that I just loved about this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Angela just said. I mean, Cad Bane is he's a favorite of mine too, and seeing him and Fennec, go toe to toe was obviously the highlight. And as they've been doing all season, I mean, the cinematography is just amazing, and those fight scenes between them look really awesome. And yeah, it was plot wise, it was pretty simple. It was a rescue mission with a little battle between I don't know, I forget in the episode, have they mentioned if they ever fought before? Was that was that their first?
He knew who she was.
He knew of her at the very least. But
so I guess we're assuming this is their first meeting, maybe first of many that we'll see, hopefully. And yeah, it was really cool. It was a really good, fun episode. It went by quickly, but it was, action packed. So, I have nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah, I agree. It was a lot of fun. It's interesting because we'll get into it here, but I wasn't sure when we would have the Bad Batch be able to link back up with Omega, how long this sort of stretch was going to go. And I was listening to some other shows. I know ahead of time there's a lot of speculation about like how long it was going to take. So so that was interesting because it'll be neat to see where it goes from here. That particular little thread's not maybe as stretched out as I kind of maybe suspected it would be. And I'm pretty happy with that, just because I love them together, because it is just, it's so great. And and I'm sure like Andrew and Thomas here too, as dads of daughters, this is a recurring.
Oh yeah,
I can't help. Yeah, Noelle will see her and she's like, "That's Omega. That's the girl who looks kind of like me, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, kind of." So she sees more of a resemblance to the character, like physical resemblance than I do, but that's a connection that we have. So she's enjoying that too.
Yeah, and it's good. I'm gonna bring that up in here too, because I think it's really important to realize that the priorities of this group of clone troopers has changed dramatically. And we see that at the very beginning. Like, so that's the first scene we get of them is Hunter saying, "No, we're not going anywhere without her." But then everybody else, like, we don't have a choice. We have to. She's not here anymore. We got to go. We got to save ourselves, or we can't help her. But that priority shift, from just an asset to no, she's a member of the family is really right. It's a great view of them as a force and as a team and as a family, really.
Yeah, and to Mike's point, I'm glad by the end of it that there wasn't like a sneak peek of like who's gonna come after her next. They kind of wrapped it up in a way to where it's like, okay, she's gonna be fine for a while, because even like Fennec said, "I'll go grab her if you pay me more," and they're like, "No, she's good as long as she's not with the Lamassu. Right. She's fine." Yeah. I'm glad that it's not gonna be. It doesn't seem like there's gonna be just an ongoing like, oh gosh, we gotta.
Who's gonna get her this week?
Exactly. Monsters Week next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mandalorian 2.0.
Oh man. So we'll dive into it here, and then say the episode opens with Clone Force 99 and a running shootout with Crosshair's ship as they're trying to jump away. But like I said, Hunter's hesitant now that they've lost Omega. And this is such a great scene because it really does show they're all struggling with it in their own way, but they're all struggling with that loss, and having almost lost Hunter too. That's it's really wearing on them that this is an issue. And to top all of that off, they're being chased by one of their own. And it's just, you almost forget that because Crosshair's kind of been gone for a majority of the season where we've been building them, but he's still one of them and they still think of him as one of them. And so that's...
And just one quick thing, Thomas, on that point with him being gone so long that I wanted to say was, I was, at first I was sort of surprised he was out of it as much as he was, but I think it was really brilliant because like we've now as an audience connected so much with them without him, that it is easy to kind of forget how close he is. So it almost like, it's like it kind of makes him potentially more ominous or even better of a villain, if that's what he's ultimately going to be in this season, because you kind of have him tucked away now.
Right.
So yeah, it was nice to see him back, but not too much just yet.
Right. Yeah, they don't have, everything hasn't come to a head yet there, and you can really feel that tension still building with them. They do escape, and we go to Bane's ship, where Bane has Omega locked away in a cell. And obviously, we can put two and two together and see that Bane is being in the employ of the Kaminoans. And so the Kaminoans, it shows that they have hired a bounty hunter to try and retrieve Omega. They want her back. And we find out that not all the Kaminoans are as sympathetic with Omega as Nala Se, which was an interesting kind of revelation to me. So Lama Su, who's like the director guy, has Nala Se and Taun Wei in the room with him. Now, Taun Wei is a very interesting figure to throw in here because she was in the Clone Wars, the movie. So this is a movie character that we're now pulling into this animated series. And we find out that their primary concern over Omega isn't for the clone herself, but for the DNA that she contains. She is the purest strand of Jango Fett's DNA, which makes her Boba Fett's sister.
I don't know much about, my knowledge of DNA anatomy, I try to expand it all the time, but I still am learning. So I was a little bit interested in the distinction that they made. They never said DNA, and I don't know if it's because they're trying to put this in a galaxy far, far away or something, but they always said genetic material. And Lama Su wants her alive, but only long enough to get the genetic material, quote unquote, and then terminate her. So I'm like, what is that really? I guess terminating her, he wants Cad Bane to bring her back alive. He says, make sure that she comes back alive, right? So why? Can't he just have her DNA if she's dead too?
Right.
Or am I missing something? Do they need more than her DNA? Do they need something that they have to take while she's alive because they're saying genetic material? I'm interested in why that is going on, why that distinction was made, because in my mind the writers should have picked up on that, and that's why that they kind of made that distinction, that Lama Su says, okay, make sure that you bring her back here alive, or you deliver her alive, and then ultimately we're just going to get rid of her.
I feel like that's it's a common plot device in a lot of movies and TV shows where catch them, but make sure they're alive. And it's just so that, Cad Bane could easily have just killed Omega and, took her body to them. And, but there wouldn't be much of a story. Right. So I think, maybe there is, to your point, maybe there is a bigger reason why she needs to be alive for them. But I feel like, it could just easily be like, oh, they'll shoehorn some reason eventually to explain that, just so, we could have her be alive for the, remainder of the season, or however long her character needs to be alive in their overall story.
It also reminds me of in The Mandalorian, where Dr. Pershing wants Grogu to be alive versus dead. And you know, it's obvious that Dr. Pershing kind of does care a little bit about Grogu, but at the same time, he probably cares more about his work, I would think. So yeah, I'm just this is stuck in my head, and I have to have it answered.
Well, they've got to give an answer about these tubes. Like, what are these tubes? Right?
But yeah.
They keep referencing them, and they keep coming up, and it's not one of those things that Dave Filoni's just going to throw in there for, you know, whatever random detail's sake. He's the kind of guy that's going to put it in there to make a point with it.
So I don't know if you remember, we saw the tubes like back at the beginning of this episode for sure, or not this episode, this season for sure. And I'm trying to think if they were in the movies too, but
I think
when
they were really
on
small,
Camino,
right? Like the little, almost like the Matrix.
It was for the little embryo clones were in tiny tubes.
So this depends on how you want to define them, right? Because if this is the early stages of what ends up being those tubes that we see in the Rise of Skywalker, right? The remainder of the Snokes and the things like that.
The formaldehyde jar.
Yeah. Then, you know, like these are just the early stages of those things. And as they get better at them and evolve them, they become more and more like that final product. Mike's brought a Snoke over.
It definitely, I mean, the aesthetic, you know, and a lot of people pointed out in that that episode where I forget the name of was it Siege in season 2 of Mandalorian?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So when they attack that facility, and and a lot of people pointed out that the music was practically identical. Not exactly, I guess, but it was, you know, you don't do that by mistake, you know, but the music was almost identical to the Snoke music. And it definitely, it was kind of vague what was in that particular tube, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Filoni's not like these aren't random occurrences. This is all very much part of the lore, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it connects. And then what implications it has, like for Grogu as well. You know, because that's not the last we've seen of him, of course.
I wonder if they're trying to make like clone soup, right? So they've got, and this is, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because we see these test tubes in this episode, but this like really, when you put all the dots together and you really think about this, she's a clone of Jango Fett. Boba Fett's a clone of Jango Fett. All the clone troopers are clones of Jango Fett. The one character, like everybody talks about, Star Wars, it all ties together, right? The one character that ties everything together, especially if these test tubes end up being what I think they are, which is like, you know, preemptive vats for trying to make a clone of the Emperor, right? Then he is like the central character of all of Star Wars.
Star Wars, Jango Fett.
It's Jango Fett Wars. That's
well, Father listening to this whenever he is just going to go nuts.
I know. That's what I was like. I was like, the one guy we need to be here this week, right?
He's like, I told you Attack of the Clones was the best movie.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So that's, but it's really like when it comes down to it, if that's what they're kind of tying these together to be, it's like, okay, now we've moved beyond just this cloning of troops to actually like trying to make because the Emperor knows he's going to die, right? Sidious knows he's going to die. That was the big problem with his predecessor, was that his predecessor was going to die.
He says he has many times, which is the big, like, what?
Right. And so now we've got this concept of him needing a perfect clone, a clone that can use the Force as well as he can, but that also is going to be able to be as full a Jedi as he wants to be. So it's going to be kind of Anakin type athleticism and precision and all of those skills that Jango Fett brings to the table, but then also the force powers of a being like Grogu. And they're trying to just mash all this together into what ends up being a whole bunch of failed clones. But now, you know, they're eventually they get things right enough, at least.
Yeah, and if you were to have told me like 10 years ago that cloning was going to be central to Star Wars, like, and connecting all of the lore together, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. 10 years ago, you know, I mean, obviously we knew cloning was part of Star Wars, but to be so, to be that, like you're saying, the thing that is tying all these things together is a little bit bizarre to me, like as a, you know, lifelong Star Wars fan. But I'm down with it.
Yeah. The Clone Wars has been around since the very beginning, right? The Clone Wars is referenced in the very first movie. So, you know, this is not it's not like they're shoehorning something in. There you go. Exactly. So, you know, it's not a new thing. It's been around since the beginning of Star Wars. It's just now we're kind of seeing everything come full circle.
Well, I haven't seen it in a while the whole way through, but I'm trying to remember now. Did Rise of Skywalker officially, like in the movie? I know there's a lot of criticism of this with like the movie versus like, oh, well, it was in the novelization. It's like, well, then why not, you know, put it in the movie if it was like the thing that was important. But the question of Rey's father, you know, the Emperor's son, there's just, I think the only mention of him, if I remember correctly, in the shuttle bay there, Kylo says, you know, your father was the son of the Emperor, my mother was the daughter of Darth Vader, or something like that. And so, but I can't remember if in the movie it officially established that Rey's father was a sort of clone or a failed clone or something in terms of the Force powers of Palpatine. Did they establish that in the movie?
Not at all.
Because I think someone said they did in the novelization, that it said that it's canon, supposedly that he was a clone, but that I'm not sure about that. I have to look that up.
That would be kind of
one of the fans will know. Yeah, I'm sure one of our fans knows. Yeah,
and then like have one scene of him and his wife being shoved onto a shuttle, and that's it. Okay, yeah.
And you can't even like see him that well.
Oh, you can't.
You know, in the scene. So,
oh man,
he didn't really look a lot like Palpatine to me, but that's whatever.
Back to Clone Force 99. Come on. Yeah, match. Okay. Anyway, speculation aside, so we find out that these couple of dark revelations about Omega are followed by this adorable little scene of her gaining Toto's confidence in order to escape her cell on Cad Bane's ship, which I thought was just brilliantly done. The whole thing. Toto was very well voiced. The whole scene was very well done. And then after repairing his leg, she manages to subdue him and then narrowly finds her comm before Cad Bane notices her escape and chases her down. And we have the awesome scene of her using the comm. And man, the HoloNet in Star Wars is amazing. That's all I have to say, because we got on this call tonight. This is an anticipated call, and Mike's camera was frozen. So, like, you know, just if you've had any Zoom hassles in the last year,
and Thomas and I are on the same coast,
right?
You know,
we're not that far from each other, and you know, so if you've had any Zoom issues in the last year, you know what we're talking about. And she's able to get from a wrist-enabled device to connect with these guys that don't know that they don't have like a direct link to her or anything like that. She doesn't know that they're looking for her. She assumes that they are, and she's able to get in touch with them from clear across the galaxy.
And they just basically do a space UE,
right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, how does this burst of energy help? Like, like you're literally like light years away, I'm assuming. Like,
oh my.
Yep. So, and they hone in on where she is narrowly and find their way to her, hoping that they're gonna end up where she is. So yeah, that's just it's just amazing. The comms in Star Wars always stun me. But of course, Bane can't let her get away, so he catches up to her in this dramatic smoke-laden walk-in scene, almost the spurs clicking as he's coming in. Very much the Texas thing, right, Angela? And he scoops her up, but before he can collect on her bounty, we find that Townway, a character from the movies, mind you, is now dead. And we soon discover that it was Fennec Shand, working for supposedly a different client, who's killed her and is after Omega.
Dun, dun, dun.
My favorite part of this, I think, like you're talking about Bane and Fennec Shand finally running into each other. And my favorite part of this interaction is when he politely informs her that she's not experienced enough to go after him.
Yeah.
You're just like, Oh, really?
Professional courtesy.
Right?
No.
I like how he kind of looks at her. It's very Western, right? He looks at her, he says Fennec Shand, and then he kind of like tilts his hat, like tips his hat to her, and then you got no business messing with my score. I just love how they really bring that in into this. And even though the fight itself doesn't feel too Westerny, you still get kind of like the scuffle sort of feel to it, rough and tumble. But the dialogue was golden for me.
It was excellent. They really hammed up the Western part of him in this, because I went back and watched some of his scenes in the Clone Wars, and yes, the hat, yes, the two pistols, it's all Western, right? But there's no point in the Clone Wars where he gets this much straight up, Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood style Western out of the character. So this is
they're totally leaning into it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. This was really, really great. Both of these episodes have been fantastic for him.
By the way, real quick, the facility there, did you guys get kind of like it kind of had like the ghost town kind of feel, which was cool just in and of itself, but also it was almost like a ghost Cloud City kind of vibe, right? Like it was, and for the moment, for a second where I was wondering, like, is that Cloud City or is that part of it? But it's definitely it looks like an abandoned Kaminoan facility, right? Like the doors are the same and all that. But that was just kind of a cool aesthetic, I thought.
Well, and the throwback to Cloud City too, because Cloud City is very much a Western trope in and of itself, right? The mining town out on the outskirts, and the traitorous mayor that takes the wayfarers in and then turns on them because he's got a better deal and he's got to take care of his people. It's like really very good, solid Western.
The people looking for you got here just before you did.
Exactly.
That kind
of. Yeah. So Fennec Shand and Bane get into a small scuffle here. It's not as big as the one that they have later on in the episode, but during the process, the payment is lost. And even though they were trying to make a deal out of it, right? So she says, okay, look, let's just do the trade. Here, I've got the money. I'll give you the money. You give me the girl. We're done. And he sort of agrees to it, but then everything kind of gets thrown off course. And the payment gets lost because Fennec's looking out for herself. She's got to take care of herself and ends up blowing up the side of the wall with Toto flying out and the box flying open and the credits spilling everywhere. And at this point, it shifts from just finishing the job to Bane now wants revenge. That's it. He is not okay with that end to the situation. And they get into honestly, this is one of the best fights that I think they've had since the Jedi. Like there's the Jedi in Clone Wars, they always had really awesome epic fights. And this is one of the best ones that I've seen. And it's great because there's no force powers involved. It's just two incredibly skilled, top of their game bounty hunters. And during this, Omega manages to escape and finds her way into one of those eerie, creepy test tube rooms. And I think there's a lot that you could... this part of the episode, I think, gets hidden under all of the action that's happening. But you really see Omega now is having to come to grips with who she is. And this is the first time that we've had her really have to deal with, what her fate is and whether she gets to pick that fate. An interesting turn for her.
I don't know if all of that was going through her head at that moment and I was really wondering what was happening because, earlier in the episode, we as the audience learn why she's so important. But then later on, she's asking, why are the Kaminoans after me? And Hunter's saying, it's because you're special. And she's like, well, special, how am I special? So I was surprised that she did not know who she was, but then when I thought about it, it makes sense. I mean, if the Kaminoans have this clone, this very special first gen Jango Fett clone under their wing, they probably want to keep that a secret. So the fact that she doesn't know, it makes more sense now. But she, she obviously didn't know as much as we thought she did. She didn't know what was so special about her. Therefore, when she's looking into, she kind of like puts her hands up on the test tube and she looks in, and she has this kind of like thoughtful face as she's looking in. And I was wondering, what was she thinking? Because obviously she knows what that is, right? I mean, we know she's got to know what that is, since she was in the medical wing, you know, and she, I mean, it's a cloning planet essentially, right? The Camino. So what was going on in her mind? I think you're right, Thomas. Later on, I believe she was, you know, obviously, you know, thinking about all those things. But was she thinking back to Camino? Like, she just saw Tonway killed, right? Right. She is realizing that there's something happening behind the scenes that she's not privy to regarding the Kaminoans. But is she thinking back to Camino fondly at all? Is she thinking back to memories with Tonway? Is she thinking back to Nala Se? I don't know. This episode raises so many more questions about all of them, right? About, oh, well, what do the Kaminoans want? What have they been doing with her? And then, you know, to address your point about the clones too, more directly, like why keep her alive this long? If all you need is the genetic material, and it obviously functioned, right? You obviously got a functional clone out of this. Why keep her alive this long? Are they waiting? And this is what I think. This is my theory going forward. Are they waiting to see if something sparks in her, like an ability sparks in her? And have they seen that now? And that's why they're willing to grab her back and take the genetic material, or what? Right, because she's first generation, supposedly pure genetic material, whereas the clones are their genetic structure was altered, right? So, but yeah, I mean, were they anticipating something different? I almost wonder, like, I don't know, maybe we'll get into this later, but Boba Fett, what they say is that he disappeared at the start of the Clone War. But we know that he's out there being a bounty hunter. And if he's a bounty hunter, I would think he isn't just kind of lying in the shadows per se. I don't know. I thought that was interesting that they said he disappeared. But were they disappointed in any way with Boba? You know, were they hoping that Omega was going to come out different? Right. I mean, I don't know. You're right. There's so many questions. We need more answers. We need more answers.
Angela, did you read? You read Dark Disciple, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember where that basically takes place around this same time, give or take a year or two? I want to say, I you know, as opposed to like right up on the edge of like the original trilogy. And the only reason I ask it is because he appears in that book. Well, you know. And he's young, like he's in his whatever, mid to late teens or something, but it's got to be before, that book has to take place before Order 66 because Quinlan Voss is alive. Right, yeah. Yeah, but I guess even more to the point, because that's Boba's already starting to get out there and get in with seedy groups and bounty hunters and stuff. He doesn't have the armor yet. Somehow, but yeah, because I was wondering this myself too. Like, they're very dismissive about Boba Fett, or well, I mean, like I guess they're looking it up in the records and stuff. But I have to believe the Kaminoans are like, let's have some people on that too, because you know what I mean. Because it's like, this kid's out. Like, we can't put everything on either one of them. So there you have Boba Fett's early training is just dodging the bounty hunters that they keep sending at him, right? Yeah, and we have the same kind of character here, except that she has this team that's helping her out. Yeah. She's having to
dodge the bounty hunters that are being sent after her too.
Well, and I for one, I'm sure everybody's in the same boat. Big fingers crossed for a live action Omega and Book of Boba Fett. Decades later, that'll be pretty awesome.
And a live action Cad Bane.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I can't wait for that. Oh,
yes.
I would love to see Cad Bane go against Han somehow in the lore. I don't know if that's been done or not, but that would be cool. Like Han trying to escape Cad Bane. That would be fun.
The two of them talking it out with their hands by their gun, just like
yeah.
back and forth. Oh, that would be fantastic. That would
That's
be really good.
I think my favorite scene from Force Awakens is when they're all cornering him on his own ship at the beginning.
You get your
he's just so like, he's like, I never made a deal with Kajic. He's like, oh man, he's just so.
You get your Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. That's that's the kind of
showdown Han came across Cad Bane at some point.
Oh, he had to. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I think to answer Angela's question about Boba Fett is I think he is being shadowy, even if he's making a name for himself, quote unquote. He's making a name for himself amongst the bounty hunters, right? And and even though we have the Mandalorian, as a kind of household name that everybody knows, it's more just that he's showing up in armor and he's being called the Mandalorian, right? Not that everybody's just shorthanding him as Mando. They don't know his name, and so I think with Boba Fett, it might end up being kind of the same thing. Is that the name he's making for himself is one that Han Solo would know, because Han Solo's probably been on the other end of that blaster a few times, right? But not necessarily anyone else would know, and so he's that seedy underbelly, kind of the way that Darth Maul was able to get away for so long, still being himself clearly, but also not getting on anybody's radar until he really wanted to be on anybody's radar. It's a big galaxy.
Do you know what the most ridiculous edit that I would love to see, all these retcon edits, where they had Tim Morrison go back and do the voiceover for Boba Fett, like in the original trilogy and stuff, which I'm totally fine with that. I'd love to see him do it for the holiday special Boba Fett. If I'm Tim, I'd take that paycheck. How long would that take? 5 minutes in the booth? You could.
Nobody wants to re-release the holiday special, man.
Oh my gosh!
It was hard enough getting Disney to put the Ewok movies on Disney Plus.
Yes. They did it.
They finally sharing those with my kids, and I'm loving it. Great. They're like,
oh my
these
gosh.
are awesome. I'm like, yeah, I know they're awesome. They're so campy, but they're great. All right. So I think, the rest of the episode kind of falls into just this series of really epic fights between Cad Bane and Fennec. And they just have this amazing series of fights where they're very athletic. They're using all of the tricks that they have against each other. Flamethrowers, the mines, whatever it is, you name it, they've got it, and they've got to put everything in, or they're not going to get out of this alive. And during all of this fighting, Omega manages to figure her own way out, where she's just like, okay, forget you guys. I see that pod is working, and I'm going to go do that. And
I started noticing how similar she is to Boba from what we've seen him as a kid, especially in this scene where she is trying to get away. I really saw that cleverness and that bravery, and now I'm starting to draw the connections now that I know who she is. So yeah,
definitely. I think that you really see she has the skills of all of the Clone Force 99, because she is that pure version of Jango Fett at his best, and it's good to see her kind of start really leaning into those. Especially when she jumps on Toto's head and just rides him down to the pod.
That was great.
It was like Anakin in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Yes.
By the lava, just
yeah.
You got to figure it out, right? That's just make it work. And so and then again, you come back to the fact that there's no force powers, just that darn good. And that's it goes back to Jango Fett's fight with Obi-Wan, right? Where he's able to actually fight a Jedi and not and put him on the ropes, almost take him out. And Cad Bane can almost make that claim too, because Cad Bane's had a couple of times where he's through the cleverness and all the trickery that he's been able to set up everything for. He took on Anakin in his prime and managed to get out of it. Not necessarily win, but enough of a win by trapping his Padawan and everything that it counts. It definitely shows you how good Cad Bane is, which then shows you how good Fennec Shand is, right? He's just amazing people that are able to keep up through their skill with these guys that have literal supernatural powers. And so we see her hotwire the pod back into order. She gets it going. She launches herself off of the deck. We think she's getting away, and the pod is just too far gone and runs out of power. And as she's falling, she's captured by some sort of ship. And when the door opens, it's Wrecker's face that we see smiling down at her, ready to bring her back into the fold. And we get that scene where she's talking with Hunter and asking why exactly it is that she's being so heavily chased. And he has to tell her that she is the clone of Jango Fett. And the very last scene we get is Nala Se telling Fennec Shand that it doesn't matter, that she doesn't have Omega. It's okay as long as she's not in the hands of anyone that's going to take her to the Empire. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So, well, I've got a few. So, Nala Se hired Fennec. Why? Right? Like, why is Omega so precious to her? We know she kind of had a relationship with Boba too, right? From the movies. So, does Nala say, like, does she have a motherly sort of just maternal care for Omega? Was Nala Se involved in creating Omega? And therefore, does she feel some kind of relationship to her? Or is there something more? You know, Lama Su at the beginning says, of course, reiterates, right, this personal interest, quote unquote, that Nala Se has. So it's like, you know, what is the connection, right? Why is she so invested in Omega that she would literally hire a bounty hunter behind Lama Su's back, right? Like, that's the prime minister of Kamino.
Well, and with the intention of killing the second in command, basically.
Yeah. This is intense.
Yeah.
So it's like, what else is going on that we don't know about, right? What's Nala Se up to at the same time? And I mean, is Nala Se planning to take over Kamino? Like, what's going on? So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I don't know. That's pretty much. I don't. I'm wondering.
Well, I think we may have like forgot to talk about this a little more when we brought it up, but the alien that came out of the tube, the tank, it looked like a Kaminoan.
Right.
Did we mention that? I don't know if I forgot if we did.
No. It looked big too.
It was big, slender, gray looking alien.
It was very much, I was 99% sure it was a Kaminoan, right?
So it's like thinking about what's the whole like purpose of them trying to, because if you remember from the first episode, the Kaminoans were desperate to, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any more context needs to be added to it, but they were desperate for more clones just because they wanted to fulfill like a contract with the Empire, right? Or something like that. They just wanted so maybe Nala Se is trying to, like you briefly mentioned, do her own thing, have their own clone, maybe form her own clones, and you know, to defend themselves, and make sure, you know, she doesn't go to the hands of the Empire. Rather, she can clone Omega herself, and they can form their own army to defend themselves and not have to rely on these contracts or anything like that.
Right. Well, and we see in The Mandalorian that it's not the Kaminoans who are doing the cloning anymore. It's the actual Empire remnants that are doing it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I thought about too. Like Dr. Pershing had that symbol of of Camino or the Kaminoans, the cloning symbol. So how is he connected to all this, right? Like, did he work with Nala Se, maybe, like on the low under the table? Was he like some sort of apprentice or something? What did maybe the Emperor, was Palpatine working with the Kaminoans like behind the scenes to try to get his own project done? Dr. Pershing was somehow involved with that. I mean, you could go on and on with all these theories. But yeah, I think Dr. Pershing also is sort of a loose end with this, where, he could, I mean, if it weren't for that symbol, to me, it's like he could have just been some other scientist that knew how to clone stuff. But the fact that he had that symbol that's so tied to Camino, in all the previous lore, it raises that question for me.
I think one of the things that Star Wars is really good at is addressing an empire that's or addressing a galaxy that's post hyperspace travel, right? Where there are all of these communities that developed their own technologies, and then they got hyperspace travel, and they started being able to really move around the galaxy. So like Bacta is a specific, it comes from a specific race in the Star Wars lore, and so there's lots of little things like that. And so you also have just the designs of the different ships. They're very specific to like certain cultures, so the big bubble type ships are for some of the Aquan races, and that they're designed because they come from a seafaring or a sea living background, and so they look like almost coral or something like that. So to say that the Kaminoans were the only ones that developed cloning technologies is not a far cry for Star Wars, which is really neat, because it kind of harkens back to the fact that, yeah, I mean, maybe if we become a starfaring race as humans, what is the thing that we're going to bring to the stars that's a technology that was unique to us? Maybe we're the only ones that learned how to split the atom, right? Maybe we're the only ones that developed nuclear technology, and that's how we got to space, but everybody else did it a different way. And so we bring in this new technology of like, oh yeah, hey, we can create this really cheap, awesome energy, and that's our way of getting to the stars. So I like that concept. I like that idea. And so to see Pershing tied back to the Kaminoans is a really cool thought. It really it fits with everything else that Star Wars does in that direction.
Yeah. Another thing that I wrote down in my notes tied to Camino was actually, I believe the very last scene was this exchange between Omega and Hunter, where he basically assures her, "You're never going back to Camino." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh, we're going back to Camino."
That's what that always means. Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So, so the question is, like, why are we going back to Camino? Right? Like, why are we going to end up there? And is she going to be taken again? Because I know, Andrew, you brought up a really good point earlier that they sort of like tied up, at least for this present time, that she's not going to be constantly, we're not going to go on this back and forth with her getting taken, and, it's like Liam Neeson all over again. But we're probably going to end up back there. So why? More questions. So any theories on that?
I mean, Nala Se is, even though she kind of looks good for, protecting Omega, for telling Fennec not to go after her, Nala Se is still a villain. I mean, let's not forget what she did to Fives. Like she, she can't be forgiven for that. So I think whatever her intentions are with Omega, I think they're going to come back to fruition. I think it's just a matter of, maybe for narrative's sake, that to take a break from that. So the the Bad Batch, can run into some other adventures. But I think ultimately we have to find out like what's Nala's intentions and what do they really want to, with Omega, or what does she herself want individually. So that's my guess as to why we'll ultimately go back there.
Yeah, because I'm under the assumption, and I don't know if you guys are too, and maybe enlighten me if this has already been established, but that Kamino was destroyed to kind of cover the Empire's behind, essentially. I
think that was previous lore. That was the previous canon, the expanded universe before the way it is now. So
yeah, it would make sense, right? If they do it now. I mean, destroying Geonosis, these are the same people that did that. So, if they don't want any more cloning happening, to overthrow the new Empire, then it would make sense to get rid of Kamino. So that's my thought. But so in that respect, then is Nala Se the one who survives somehow? And we're maybe going to see her later, like on The Mandalorian or something crazy like that. I am wondering what all is, if Kamino's going to continue to come back, especially as Thomas was saying, everything is tied back to Jango, and we have so many clones running around the galaxy now that we didn't know were still there. So
it's like all those Jedi that survived Order 66.
Yeah. Do you think they have this? I think they're getting a wait list for Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian. Like supposedly, Thrawn, Luke Skywalker, Grogu, Nala Se, Omega. Like, no. So I don't know. I keep worrying. I'm just our titular characters here. I just can't stop asking, like, they're not in Rebels. Right. I don't know, like where are they? I don't know why. Like they're not just the kinds of guys to go like Thanos farm homestead type, off in the middle of nowhere with their helmets up on, helmets and armor making scarecrows in the field. Like, I don't really anticipate that with them. I mean, goodness sakes, Rex can't even take his armor off. Which, by the way, it must have some elasticity, because I'm not knocking Rex, but, in Heroes. In Rebels, he has... he's a little heftier than he once was in his younger years, and that it's snug, but it still fits.
Because Rebels got to tie him through to the guy that was on Endor, right? You gotta
indeed,
gotta fit those two together.
Yeah, I think we're pretty sure that Dave Filoni did pretty much canonize that. So,
if he hasn't canonized it, he's definitely said that's who he modeled that character off of. So, oh man. All right. Anything else?
I think did I mention? I think I mentioned that a few episodes. There, you can look it up on Google. There's a Forces of Destiny picture that I think I mentioned that before. The Endor, and you can see the arm plates just like Rex has on that guy. So I think he's slipping that in there.
It's totally
It's Rex. Come on.
It's Rex. We'll all just agree that it is. All right.
I think one more thing was I just wanted to give a shout out to Toto for being some humor in this episode. I really liked how Seth Green delivered, especially that line where he kind of wakes up, Bane turns him back on, and then he's like, "Mr. Bane, she's quite obviously right there."
Oh, he's so good.
The droid personalities in Star Wars are always fantastic. Love the droid personality. All right, that is it from us. What did you think of this episode of The Bad Batch? Be sure to email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page and let us know. You can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com and find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter @SQPN. And don't forget to provide us with some title ideas for that segment about the Star Wars waiting line names. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including Rob H., Peter H., Frank C., Claire R., and David G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows here at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts. We will not be charging you for that, so we're not going to be a premium show. We're going to stay available for you, but do subscribe because that helps us. Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. To find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. Join us again next week as we discuss the next exciting episode of The Bad Batch. Until then, Andrew Hermans, it's nice having you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me as well, Mike Creevy.
Oh, the pleasure as always.
And you as well, Angela Ciolana. Nice having you.
Bye.
And once again, I'm Thomas Senherho. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.